Satisfactory has been around for a while now, having spent 5 years in early access. It's transformed quite a bit since launching way back when, and has now officially released its 1.0 version. So whether you're booting it up for the first time, or you need a refresher on the basics, here are 11 important things you should know before jumping in. Just note that this guide mostly only covers Phase 1, so we'll be covering ways to maximize your time on the outset, using basic miners, biomass burners, and very little alien technology. Let's get to it. Satisfactory is one big static map, but when starting fresh, you'll get the option for several different areas to start at, with grassy fields being the default location. The rocky desert, however, is the one we recommend, as it has the best resources that you'll be able to find early on that will help you in the long run. Luckily, this area is still classified as a beginner-friendly zone, so it will house less aggressive creatures than Northern Forest or Dune Desert. Some of the resources you can expect to find early are coal, sulfur, and quartz. Water is also in abundance in the desert, which is crucial for late-game power consumption. Eventually, you will branch out towards the other 3 locations for more resources. We just recommend Rocky Desert on the outset. While you can always move your hub later when you find a better location, it's best to set your hub down near an area with various resource nodes. Find locations with pure nodes that output much more resources than impure. You can double check what nodes are pure or impure by hovering over them when you're close enough to mine them. If you find a resource node that you really need and you don't have a way to get your base extended to that location yet, set down multiple portable miners on that one node and you'll be able to extract more at once. Eventually, you'll be able to stretch out your power lines to that node so that way you can plant a proper miner there with conveyor belts. Portable miners will just help you get a jump start making the product you need for the next unlocks. Of course, the other option would be to not wait until you can get power lines there, drop the miner and the conveyor belts, but doing this means it needs its own biomass power generator to keep it powered up. So that's something you'll have to monitor. Satisfactory's world is huge, and you'll want to unlock the ability to pull up a map as soon as possible. To unlock the map, you'll need to reach Tier 1 Field Upgrade in the hub. You can skip ahead to this milestone once you reach Tier 1, and it's recommended that you prioritize this upgrade over the other ones. To unlock the Field Research Upgrade, you'll need 300 wires, 300 screws, and 100 iron plates, which are all pretty early materials to craft. Once you have the map, you can see the areas you've explored thus far, and begin setting markers for ore deposits, interesting fauna, and more. To do this, use your scanner to look for a specific resource. Once you scan, open the map and the resources will pop up, and then you can even mouse over them to check their purity. Following the previous tip about unlocking the map, work towards fulfilling each milestone's needs so that you can quickly earn new production buildings and tools that will help make your life easier with mining new materials. Jump pads, for example, are a great item to unlock after the map. That way you can get around big cliffs or even second or third stories of your production lines. Conveyor belts are the bread and butter of production in Satisfactory. So much time will be saved once you start making belts do all the work, and luckily, they are versatile. The conveyor belts can bend and curve to fit your needs, and when you click to place one, you're also given the option to change their height before finalizing the placement. You'll want to use the conveyor belts to set up efficient ways to mine. Connecting an iron ore miner to a smelter and then connecting that smelter to a storage container essentially means you've removed 2 manual labor actions. As long as you keep the machines powered, your only job from here is to collect the iron ingots from your storage container. Also, conveyor belts make for great pathways through rough terrain, so if a faraway machine runs out of power, just hop on the conveyor belt you built for a quick path to that machine. In short, the next time you find yourself manually crafting 300 wires at the workbench, just know that there is a way to automate that process, which allows you to take on one of your many other tasks. The further you get into Satisfactory, the larger your base will become. Ensure that you have a good starting layout with production machines and storage so that as you build, you can build on top of that original core base. Don't be afraid to take up space either. This is your land. Something to be mindful of, however, is how many temporary productions you have set up. What we mean by this is, early on while building, it may not seem worth your time to efficiently build a base, and so you might want to just get production going on certain resources. So So you end up setting up a lot of quick and dirty productions that work for now. That's fine, as you need materials quickly early on. That said, if you keep building in this haphazard way, you'll eventually find yourself in an incredibly messy and unorganized base. Power lines will have no rhyme or reason, and the conveyor belts will be going every which way. Our point is that even when resources are scarce at the beginning, do your best to keep your base neat and organized. It'll help you out so much later on and will save you from having to delete and move poorly placed buildings. That said, if you do have to delete buildings, it's fine. Other than the headache of having to find a new spot for it and usually running new power lines to it, you'll get all the spent materials back when deleting a building. Same goes for conveyor belts or storage containers. Dismantling them will give you everything that those structures contained, and if you don't have enough space, it'll leave them in a temporary storage container for you to pick up once you've cleared out your inventory. Leaves and wood are your best friends in the early game. While traveling around early on, you should always be collecting as you need them to power your base. That said, you should be converting them to biomass before chucking them in the biomass burner, as biomass burns more effectively than raw leaves and wood. Under Tier 2, obstacle clearing, you'll unlock the chainsaw alongside solid biofuel to power it. This is definitely something you should go for early on, as it allows you to gather wood and leaves much faster. The chainsaw has two modes. If you're trying to just clear a path, use single mode as it'll only chop what you're targeting. You'll mostly be using area mode, however, as it chops and collects all of the wood and bushes in your area. It's much faster when trying to farm biomass. If you want to keep track of recipes for a specific build that you need, just right-click on the item you want to create and add it to your to-do list. The materials you need for the structures will eventually become a little overwhelming to remember, so tracking what you need to build is almost like creating mini quests for yourself to complete. Additionally, if you need a specific item and forgot how it's made, and you don't have it handy in your inventory, press the N key on your keyboard to bring up a search bar. Simply type the item you need to quickly find out how it's made. Not everything needs to be a full-on production assembly line. If you're running short on screws, for example, you can set up a temporary screw-making device using just a constructor and storage container. As long as the constructor has power, it'll pump out screws. You'll just need to manually place rods into the constructor, or set up a storage container behind the constructor to feed it hundreds of rods. Screws are just an example here. Use this method for any material you might be low on, but don't want to bother making yourself. I know, nobody wants to hear it, we're here to play a video game, but trust us, you'll be a lot more successful in said video game if you just stop and do the math every so often, especially early on. Examples of this would be knowing how long a biomass burner can run for. A biomass burner burns 10 biomass every minute. As you can see here, I have 3 hooked up to one storage container, with the storage container feeding the 3 biomass burners. A storage container can hold 4,800 biomass. So, if the storage container is completely filled with biomass, that gives us 5,400 biomass. 4,800 for the storage container, and 600 between the 3 biomass burners, which means that these 3 biomass burners can run for 540 minutes, or 9 hours, without ever needing to be touched again. Another early one to look out for is conveyor belt speed. The Mark I conveyor belt can only carry 60 objects per minute. The Mark I miner can only produce 60 pieces of ore per minute, giving this a 1-to-1 ratio on production and transportation. You'll soon unlock the Mark II conveyor belt that can transport 120 items per minute, but simple math tells us that we're now transporting at double the speed that we're producing, meaning we've either wasted resources on crafting the Mark II conveyor belt, or we need to unlock the Mark II miner as fast as possible to once again match that 1-to-1 production rate. There are, of course, other instances where a Mark II conveyor belt is useful, especially when merging conveyor belts. Again, it's all about just doing the math to make sure your resources are being spent wisely. Don't upgrade for upgrade's sake just because you unlock something. Spend some time to make sure the math checks out to ensure that you're actually benefiting from the things that you're building. Using these tips, you should be able to get your first base up and running in no time. If you want to see what an incredibly advanced base looks like, make sure to check out our review of Satisfactory, or you can watch a tour of our reviewer's massive base. And of course, for everything else video games, stick with IGN.